Dennis and Brenda Bowman were a married couple living in Holland, Michigan in 1989. They built their home on the corner of Lincoln Avenue and 52nd Street, where Dennis worked as a woodworker and Brenda worked at the jewelry counter at a Meijer department store. They had 2 children, Andrea and Vanessa Bowman. Andrea, born Alexis Badger, was born on June 23, 1974, to Kathy Turkanian and Randy Badger. Before her first birthday, Dennis and Brenda Bowman adopted her and renamed her Vanessa. In January 1988, she had a little sister. From being the only child in the family, Andrea soon took on the role of more than a big sister. She became a third mother to her chubby redhead. Andrea stayed home while her peers were out at after-school clubs or in the stands at Friday night football games, changing diapers and washing bottles. On March 11, 1989, Dennis Bowman called the police to report that his daughter, then 14, was missing. He said that when he returned from work, he discovered that Andrea was gone and that some of her personal belongings and $100 were missing from her closet. According to Dennis, Andrea was a girl who often argued with her mother and had a history of running away, though she had only visited friends and had not committed any crimes. The police quickly classified Andrea as a runaway and referred her to the Department of Juvenile Services. But not everyone believed the official story. For years, rumors about the Bowmans circulated. In junior high, Andrea once boarded a bus with a bloody wrist. Some classmates whispered that she had tried to commit suicide, while others said she had accidentally cut herself trying to climb back into the house after being locked out by her parents. The community also had a lot to say about Dennis and Brenda. Dennis was said to be a Navy reservist with reddish-brown hair, a goatee, and wire-rimmed glasses. Brenda, a curvaceous woman with curly hair, was rumored to have abused her adopted daughter. But at the time, what went on behind closed doors was considered a family affair. Many believed that Andrea had become so fed up with life in the house that she decided to leave. Rumor had it that she hitchhiked to the local truck stop, then left town with an older or pregnant man. In the weeks and months that followed, Brenda continued to report to the police the leads she received, all of which reinforced the theory that Andrea had run away. The only photo many people remember of Andrea is the one the police used when she went missing. It shows her sitting against a green studio backdrop, her green eyes looking up, seemingly into the distance. At the time, pictures of missing children were often found on milk cartons or pizza delivery boxes. But in 1993, Andrea's photo appeared in a more unusual place, in the music video for Runaway Train by the band Soul Asylum. The video, which featured the names and pictures of missing children from across the United States, became a phenomenon, airing on MTV and VH1 in several versions. One of the videos aired in Michigan, and Andrea's photo appeared just after the 2-minute mark. Unfortunately, thanks to the Runaway Train video, Andrea Bowman was not among the children found. Her case gradually faded into obscurity, becoming one of countless cold files. However, a significant turning point came in 2010 when Carl Koppelman stepped in to investigate. Carl, a true crime enthusiast, came across Andrea's case through Web Sleuths, a forum where amateur detectives and crime enthusiasts collaborate to solve cold cases. He spent hours scrolling through the national database of missing persons and unidentified bodies, called NamUs. The system has 2 main categories, missing persons and unidentified bodies. During his search, Carl realized something surprising. Many bodies were unidentifiable due to their changing condition and age, making them difficult for their families to recognize. This inspired him to create photorealistic renderings of unidentified bodies, which recreated what they looked like before they died. Several cases our channel has previously covered have been solved using these renderings. After completing each sketch, Carl submitted it to the NamUs database for publication and shared it on amateur sleuthing forums, allowing others to use it to identify victims. He later collaborated with police departments and the DNA Doe Project, an organization dedicated to identifying human remains through genetic testing and genealogical research. Carl was particularly interested in the case of Jane Doe in Racine County, Wisconsin. Her body was found near the edge of a cornfield in 1999. An autopsy revealed that she had died about 12 hours earlier, but rain had washed away nearly all of the key evidence. Investigators believe the young woman was murdered elsewhere before being dumped there. Forensic findings suggested that the victim may have been cognitively disabled and had suffered long-term abuse. She bore many signs of abuse, with old injuries on her body, even a mutilated ear. Though no one knew her identity, more than 50 people from the local community attended her funeral to say goodbye. She wore a gray men's jacket and a silver Western-style shirt embroidered with red flowers when she was found. Armed with these clues, Carl entered search criteria into the database: gender, age, and location. Often the results didn't match. The age was wrong, or the area didn't make sense. But this time, one name stopped him: Hope Andrea Bowman. Andrea and Racine County's Jane Doe had similar physical features, and their ages matched perfectly. In 1999, when Jane Doe was murdered, Andrea would have been 25. More importantly, the location where Andrea disappeared, Holland, Michigan, was just a 4-hour drive from where Jane Doe had been found, just across Lake Michigan. Carl immediately reported his discovery to law enforcement. The police found the theory compelling enough to open a real investigation. However, they needed a DNA sample from Andrea's family to confirm the identity. Since Andrea was adopted, the police had to track down her biological mother, a lengthy and challenging process. After much effort, they identified Andrea's biological mother, Kathy Tarkanian. In 1972, at 14, Kathy had run away from her family in Virginia. With no money or plans, she hitchhiked to Memphis, Tennessee, where she met 19-year-old Randy Badger. In December 1972, Kathy Tarkanian and Randy Badger traveled to South Carolina, where it was legal for minors to marry with parental consent. Surprisingly, Kathy's parents happily agreed, not because they supported the relationship, but because they did not want to be responsible for their daughter. Their marriage lasted less than a year when Kathy discovered she was pregnant. On June 23, 1974, she gave birth to a healthy baby girl named Alexis, but the joy was short-lived. When Alexis was 5 months old, Kathy and Randy separated. Left with no choice, Kathy took her child back to Virginia, hoping her family would help. But she quickly realized that no one would help her raise her daughter. In desperation, Kathy put Alexis up for adoption, hoping that she would have a better life. A few months later, Dennis and Brenda Bowman adopted the girl, changing her name to Andrea Bowman and closing her past in mystery. In April 2010, the police investigating Andrea's disappearance sent a letter to Kathy Tarkanian's home. In it, they explained that her daughter had disappeared from her foster home and might be a Jane Doe found in Wisconsin. To confirm, they needed Kathy's DNA. Although shocked by the news, Kathy agreed to cooperate, but she also wanted to know what had happened to her daughter. The letter offered no details, not mentioning that Alexis's name had been changed to Andrea Bowman. With her mind in turmoil, Kathy began searching the internet for missing girls in Michigan. It didn't take long for her to discover a shocking name: Andrea Bowman, a girl from Holland Township whose birth date and physical features matched Alexis's. When Kathy saw Andrea's school photo, she was almost sure this was her daughter. While waiting for the DNA results, she continued researching Andrea's life and quickly connected with Carl Koppelman, who was investigating her case. However, a phone call left Kathy even more horrified. A retired Michigan detective named Pat O'Reilly contacted her and revealed a shocking truth. Andrea's adoptive father, Dennis Bowman, was responsible for her disappearance. So who was Dennis Bowman? And what crimes had he committed in the past? Dennis's criminal record was anything but clean. One of the most terrifying cases involving him occurred in May 1980. A 19-year-old girl was riding her bicycle on a road north of Holland, Michigan, when she was suddenly pulled off the road by a man on a motorcycle. He stopped the car, walked towards her, and ordered, "Get out of the car! Go into the woods!" The girl froze, not moving. The man pulled out a gun, fired a warning shot across her body, and repeated the command, but she remained still. This time he fired at the ground, the bullet hitting her right in the leg. "Next time, it will be you," he threatened. Just then a car drove by. The attacker turned his head in surprise towards the sound, and at that moment, the girl took advantage of the opportunity, jumped on her bicycle and pedaled as fast as she could. He did not shoot again, nor did he chase after her. Fortunately, the girl managed to flag down a nearby truck, and the driver took her home safely. Her family immediately called the police. When asked about the attacker's characteristics, the girl described him as a white man, wearing tinted glasses and a blue helmet, and his motorcycle had a bucket of asphalt on the back. Could this attack be related to Andrea's disappearance? And is Dennis Bowman the monster behind all this tragedy? Later that day, the police arrested a suspect. When the young woman saw him, she didn't hesitate. She immediately confirmed that he was the one who had tried to attack her. The suspect was Dennis Bowman, a married man with children. At the time of his arrest, his adopted daughter, Andrea, was just under 6 years old. Dennis was charged with assault with intent to commit a crime and sentenced to 5 to 10 years in prison. A judge determined that he was a danger to women if released and ordered him to undergo psychological counseling. However, Dennis served only the minimum sentence before being released. One day in 1998, Michigan State Police received an alert from the security system of a mobile home owned by 28-year-old Vicky Vandenbrink. Vicky reported so many break-ins that the sheriff's department installed an alarm system. When police arrived, they found Dennis Bowman sneaking out the back door. The Bowmans had moved to Hamilton, a town between Holland and Dorr, just a few months after Andrea disappeared in 1989. When questioned, Dennis claimed that he was staying at the home of Vicky, a former co-worker, and denied any wrongdoing. However, when police contacted Vicky, she ultimately rejected Dennis's story. She insisted that he had no reason to be in her home and no permission to be there. Pushed into a corner, Dennis quickly changed his story, saying that he had only gone to use the bathroom. He also claimed that he had been there once before, when his daughter Vanessa had come to sell Girl Scout cookies to Vicky. Suspecting something was wrong, the police asked permission to search Dennis's property, and what they found exposed his true nature. In the attic of an outbuilding, they discovered a black duffel bag filled with Vicky's underwear, a short-barreled handgun, a black sweatshirt, and a mask, all telltale signs of a sinister plot. After hearing what Detective Pat O'Reilly had revealed about Dennis Bowman, Kathy Tarkanian decided to find out for herself. She filed a Freedom of Information Act request for Dennis's criminal records. What she discovered horrified her. Based on Dennis's criminal history and the way he attacked women, Kathy believed that he had murdered Andrea. If true, it meant that the Jane Doe in Racine County could not have been Andrea. And in 2013, after more than a decade of waiting, the truth finally came out. DNA testing confirmed that Kathy was not related to Jane Doe. Andrea Bowman has yet to be found. In September 2013, Kathy and Carl Koppelman met in person at a missing persons conference in Michigan organized by the state police. The event was meant to raise awareness and hopefully find new leads in unsolved cases. Kathy and Carl arrived at the conference dressed in distinctive attire, shirts that read, "Find Andrea Bowman." As Carl scanned the room, he suddenly froze. "Kathy, look!" Kathy turned. Standing before them was Vanessa, Dennis and Brenda Bowman's young daughter, but she wasn't alone. "That's Brenda!" Brenda immediately recognized Kathy. She had seen Kathy's Facebook posts, where she claimed that Dennis was responsible for Andrea's disappearance. Brenda seemed eager to explain. She insisted that she and Dennis had cooperated fully with the police after Andrea's disappearance. She even brought a notebook and flyers for missing persons to prove it. But when Carl mentioned Dennis's criminal record, Brenda's reaction was shocking. "I don't forget what he did, but I forgive him. I take my marriage vows very seriously." The hidden truth. After the conference, Kathy decided she couldn't wait any longer. She hired a private investigator named Jeffrey, who helped her access Andrea's police files, which she had never seen before. But there was something strange. The earliest document in the file was not from when Andrea was a child, but from March 1989, when she disappeared. And what about the 4 months before that? The report noted that the police had investigated allegations of abuse in the Bowman household. But the important thing was that the file didn't go into detail. It simply concluded that the allegations were unfounded. Is this a hidden truth? And what happened to Andrea Bowman? Carl and Kathy were convinced that law enforcement was missing something in their investigation into Andrea Bowman's disappearance. They doggedly pursued the case, and in 2017, they met with Chris Haverdink, the new detective assigned to Andrea's case. Haverdink agreed that Dennis Bowman was a suspect, but there was insufficient evidence to arrest him. It wasn't until November 22, 2019, that the Allegan County Sheriff's Office arrested Dennis Bowman, but not for anything related to Andrea. This time, he was arrested for a crime that had occurred 9 years before Andrea went missing, more than 800 miles from the shores of Lake Michigan. He was accused of murdering Kathleen Doyle in 1980. Kathleen Doyle, 25, was found brutally attacked in her own home. She was stripped, gagged, strangled with an electrical cord, and then stabbed to death. Investigators were able to collect the killer's DNA from her body, but at the time, technology was not advanced enough to identify the perpetrator. In 1983, notorious serial killer Henry Lee Lucas confessed that he and his partner Otis Toole were responsible for the crime. But the confession was later rejected, and the case hit a dead end. It wasn't until science caught up with the crime that a breakthrough came. With the development of genetic genealogy, investigators could compare unidentified DNA to many samples stored in databases, helping to solve many cold cases. Norfolk Police partnered with Parabon Nanolabs, a leader in the field, to analyze the DNA collected from Kathleen Doyle's crime scene. In 2019, after much testing and investigation, the list of suspects gradually narrowed until all signs pointed directly to Dennis Bowman. With solid evidence in hand, the police arrested him and extradited him to Virginia to stand trial. In court, Dennis Bowman finally admitted to the crime. He said he broke into Kathleen Doyle's house through the back window one night when he was drunk. He had initially intended to commit a burglary, but when he discovered Kathleen was in the house, he decided to kill her to cover up the evidence. Bowman was in Norfolk at the time because of his annual 2-week duty in the Naval Reserve. Ironically, he was also on bail awaiting trial for the 1980 attack on a 19-year-old girl in Holland, Michigan, a victim who had escaped on a bicycle. Kathy had no idea she would play a key role in bringing Dennis Bowman to justice. The private investigator Kathy hired, Jeffrey Floor, revealed that the Bowman family had filed a harassment complaint with the Allegan County Sheriff's Office. They alleged that she had smeared Dennis online, repeatedly accusing him of involvement in Andrea's disappearance. And it was during that time that the police gave Dennis a bottle of water as he left the station. He had no idea they had kept the water to collect his DNA. It was this DNA that became the key to unlocking the mystery of Kathleen Doyle's death. In the first week of February 2020, police returned to Dennis Bowman's property, this time with a forensics team, a crime scene tent, and dogs. Officers zeroed in on a specific backyard area as the Michigan sky filled with snow and began digging. By the end of the day, they held a press conference. They announced that they had found human remains, and it was likely that they were Andrea Bowman. To confirm the identity, police needed a DNA sample from a relative. Without hesitation, Kathy immediately provided her DNA. Finally, after more than 3 decades of waiting, the truth about Andrea Bowman's fate was about to be revealed. In March 2020, nearly 31 years after Andrea went missing, DNA testing finally provided an incontrovertible answer. The remains found were those of Andrea Bowman. When confronted with the truth, Dennis Bowman tried to justify his actions. He claimed that Andrea's death was an accident, that they had argued, and in a fit of rage, he slapped her down, breaking her neck. He had falsely reported his daughter missing to cover up his crime. This was the same story he told Brenda in letters from prison. In June 2020, Dennis Bowman was sentenced to 2 life terms, plus 20 years, for the 1980 murder of Kathleen Doyle. He was ordered to serve his sentence in Michigan, where he will continue to face justice for what he did to Andrea. Andrea's death trial was held in February 2021. The first to take the stand was Brenda Bowman. Through tears, she recounted her desperate time posting missing person posters. She said she believed Andrea had run away until Dennis was arrested in the Kathleen Doyle case. But then, when asked if Andrea had ever accused Dennis of abusing her, Brenda admitted that she had, but that she didn't believe the accusations. "That was a lie," Brenda admitted. "I told Andrea that." When Andrea disappeared, Brenda had no idea she had unwittingly provided the most important clue. In a phone call from prison, Dennis confessed to Brenda that he had buried Andrea in their backyard. Brenda couldn't believe it. "How is that possible?" she asked. "We weren't living there when Andrea disappeared." The horrifying truth continued to emerge. Dennis explained that after killing Andrea, he kept her body until the family moved into their new home in Hamilton. As soon as they signed the paperwork to buy the house, he moved her body there and buried it in the backyard. The concrete they walked on every day was Andrea's gravestone. Brenda was devastated. For 30 years, she had lived with a man who killed their daughter and didn't know it. "He didn't lie this time," she whispered when detectives asked about Andrea's remains. "He told the truth this time." Throughout the trial, Dennis Bowman sat expressionless, wearing a green shirt, bow tie, and mask. On December 22, 2021, he pleaded no contest to the charges. The court sentenced him to an additional 35 to 50 years in prison for the murder of Andrea Bowman. But the truth about Dennis Bowman didn't stop there. Dennis wasn't a random killer. He was a monster all along. Records show that in 1979, a brutal attack made the front page of the Holland Sentinel. The victim, a 27-year-old woman, was found bound, gagged, and brutally attacked in her own home early Sunday morning. The killer took cash from the house before fleeing, leaving behind a police sketch, a white man with dyed blonde hair and wire-rimmed glasses. Detectives believe this wasn't the only time he struck. They suspect there were other victims, unsolved cases, names that have never been heard. After all the hard work, many still wonder about the true identity of the Jane Doe of Racine County, the victim once thought to be Andrea Bowman. She finally has a name: Peggy Johnson. Peggy has never been reported missing. She was last seen at a homecoming dance in Harvard, Illinois in 1994. No one knows what happened to the young woman. No one is looking for her. Only one person is concerned. An aunt so worried that she placed a notice in the newspaper. But no one paid attention. Peggy disappeared shortly after her mother died. A 19-year-old orphan living in poverty and who has a developmental disability, Peggy was homeless. That's when she met Linda LaRoche, a nurse who offered Peggy a maid and babysitter job. Peggy thought she had found a chance to build a new life. But over the next 5 years, LaRoche beat, starved, and abused the young woman. The violence reached a boiling point in 1999 when LaRoche murdered Peggy and dumped her body in Raymond, Washington. No one recognized her, and so she became the Jane Doe of Racine County for over 20 years.